So, since the beginning of the Democratic Party primaries, I've been saying, frankly to the disagreement of many, many Democrats, that I believe that the Hillary Clinton email scandal would be a bigger deal than most Democrats might want it to be. I said that I believe that it could be something that could eventually hurt Hillary Clinton in the general election, and that nominating Hillary Clinton with this scandal hanging out there might not be the best idea if you want to avoid having a President Donald Trump. So, fast forward, on Wednesday, the Office of the Inspector General of the State Department released a report, and it frankly, honestly, does not put Secretary Clinton in a very good light. So before we get into the details of the report, let me put something out there that you should be aware of. This report is by the U.S. State Department. It's not by Fox News, it's not by the Republican Senate, it's not by the Republican House, it is by the U.S. State Department. John Kerry's State Department, Barack Obama's State Department. So, there is such a thing as partisan witch hunts, right? They happen all the time. It happens to the Clintons. As someone who's not a fan of the Clintons, it happens to the Clintons. This isn't one of them, in my opinion. So let's get to some of the details of the report. Reading from The Hill, quote, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton and her senior aides did not comply with the State Department's record-keeping policies, an internal watchdog determined in a report sent to Capitol Hill on Wednesday. By exclusively using a personal email address routed through a private server, Clinton circumvented policies designed to follow federal records laws and might have jeopardized official secrets, the department's Office of the Inspector General said. Further down in the report, The Hill reports that, quote, Clinton never requested permission to use the personal server, which was located at her New York home, and it would not have been approved, in part because of the security risks in doing so, the watchdog agency wrote. Further down in the report, The Hill says, quote, Clinton never demonstrated to the State Department security officials that her personal server or BlackBerry device met the minimum information security requirements. Also, further down, Clinton's decision not to use an official department email address is not an appropriate method of preserving emails under the Federal Records Act, the Inspector General said in a hotly anticipated 83-page report. So, end quote. That's all from The Hill, summarizing this State Department report here. So, look, I don't see how, frankly, Democrats or people who do not want Donald Trump to be president of the United States can think of this as good news, right? It certainly does not show Secretary Clinton in a positive light at all. And look, I'm not saying that this definitely means we're going to get President Trump. It definitely means Donald Trump's going to beat Hillary Clinton. I'm not saying that. But if you do not want a President Trump, and I for sure don't, I think we have reason to be concerned. I think you should be concerned. So a lot of Democrats don't think that this email scandal is a big deal. Let me explain why, as a progressive, the email scandal bothers me, because it does. So, for starters, under federal law, Hillary Clinton's emails while she was Secretary of State are government records. By law, they should have been preserved on State Department servers for journalists, for historians, for us, the public. Look, we as taxpayers and as citizens should have access to them under the Federal Records Act. That's important. That's how we know how history happens, having records to communication. That matters to me. Having an open and transparent government, as a progressive, that matters to me. Many Democrats have argued that the email scandal's not a big deal because, Condi Rice did it, Colin Powell did it. I'm sorry. As a progressive, I do not find George W. Bush did it. I don't find that an acceptable excuse. Really? That's your argument? The Bush administration did it? One of the worst presidents in history with war criminals? They started the Iraq War? That's the excuse? That's what you want to hang your hat on? The Bush administration? Also, the whole Bush administration did it too. is not exactly entirely true. On some cases it is, but not the whole thing. So Condi Rice didn't use a private email. Colin Powell did. The report actually goes after him as well. Powell, however, did not set up his own server in his own house. But let's get back to this and why this is a little different. Reading from The Hill again, quote, from The Hill, unlike previous secretaries of state, the department's record-keeping policies were more evolved by the time Clinton took office, the report maintained. So her activities must be evaluated in light of these more comprehensive directives, end quote. So here's the deal. By the time Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State, the rules were more set in stone. They were more comprehensive. The rules were there. Hillary Clinton chose to ignore the rules. That bothers me too. Look, I don't want a president who does stuff like that. I don't want a president who thinks they don't have to follow the rules. That bothers me. So let's try to get to why did Hillary Clinton do it? I mean, I don't know. I don't know what's in her soul. I don't know what made her do it. But reading from the New York Times, and this is actually something I have thought previously of why Hillary Clinton did this, but there's actually a little bit of evidence that I think add some credence to what I was thinking previously. So reading from the New York Times on the report, quote, the report also added new detail about Mrs. Clinton's motivation for using the private server, which she has said was set up for convenience. In November 2010, her deputy chief of staff for operations prodded her about putting you on a state email or releasing your email address to the department so you're not going to spam. Mrs. Clinton, however, replied that she would consider a separate address or device, but, quote, I don't want any risk of the personal being accessible, end quote. That's why I think she did it. That's really why I think she did it. She wanted control of all of her emails. She didn't want anything embarrassing getting out there. Maybe she didn't want anything having to do with the Clinton Foundation getting out there. There's a lot of things that, she probably didn't want to have to get out there, which is probably why she should have just had a friggin' U.S. State Department email to begin with. If she didn't want anything embarrassing getting out there, she should have had them separate. That's what she should have done. She chose not to do this. And remember, while Secretary Clinton eventually, 2 years after she left the State Department, 2 years later, she finally turned over a bunch of emails. They actually deleted around 30,000 of them. 30,000 emails were deleted by Hillary Clinton. I mean, not her personally, but by her tech people. And look, probably a lot of them were spam. They were, offers on Amazon, offers on Best Buy. That's probably what a lot of them might have been. But look, here's the deal. As Secretary of State, that wasn't her decision to make. If she was to make this call as Secretary of State, what might she do as president? I think if this had happened in the Bush administration, if this scandal happens in the Bush administration, every single liberal, every single progressive, every single Democrat would be up in arms about the Bush administration deleting 30,000 emails. We would be furious, and rightfully so. I want to make one more point on this. So the whole classified docs side of this thing, the classified documents thing, I don't know. Personally, that doesn't bother me a whole lot. I think most things in our government are way, way over classified. I really do believe that. To be fair, Hillary Clinton has attacked both Chelsea Manning and Edward Snowden for using classified materials in their whistleblowing. So when it comes to people like Chelsea Manning and Edward Snowden, classification, it's really, really important. When it comes to her, it's not as important. But anyway, she thinks they deserve to be prosecuted for their whistleblowing with classified materials. She thinks her classified materials being on unsecured servers is fine. But honestly, other than the hypocrisy, which bothers me, the classification stuff doesn't bother me a ton. However, I think when it comes to the upcoming general election, I actually do think it's going to bother some potential swing voters. I do. I think there are a lot of people who consider themselves national security voters out there who, correct or not, who like it or not, are going to see what Secretary Clinton did here as dangerous for national security. And again, I honestly, personally don't think it's that big of a deal. I think things are overclassified. But as someone who doesn't want President Donald Trump, I think this could be an election issue. Also, just so you know, Hillary Clinton refused to be interviewed by the State Department for this report. Most of her senior aides refused to be interviewed for this report. And again, this is from the State Department, run by John Kerry, run by Barack Obama, not what the Senate, controlled by the Republicans, or the House controlled by the Republicans, are going to do. Also, the FBI has an open investigation on this, and the person who set up the Clinton server has been granted immunity from prosecution. They don't just give those out for nothing. So look, Democrats, those of you out there who do not want President Trump, I hope you know what you're doing. Because as polls tighten up between Donald Trump and Hillary Clinton, as Donald Trump actually takes the lead in some polls, a story like this, something like this, that we knew about going into the primaries, that a large portion of Democratic voters chose to ignore. It does have the possibility, I don't know if it's going to, but you have to admit, it at least has the possibility of swaying, I don't know, 1% of the voters in Ohio. That might be enough. 1% of the voters in Florida. That might be enough to swing a state and swing an election. It might. And if it does, Democrats, not Bernie Sanders, not the ones who voted for Bernie Sanders, Democrats, the ones who ignored this brewing scandal, let's be clear, you will be the ones who are responsible for President Donald Trump.